I need to announce that we were in executive session to discuss litigation and student placement, but now we're here. My first task for the evening is with your pleasure. I have 4 teachers who have satisfied the requirements for tenure. Ms. Rebecca Aker was not able to attend, but has satisfied the requirements. And Ms. Megan Schaefer. Would you like, please? I've got a certificate here to give you. And I'm older than you, so you get to come up.
Megan, I didn't know your new name.
I know.
She's Megan Hunter.
I know.
You gotta get used to your new name now.
Thank you.
Colleen Ritter,
It's not here.
not here. Lauren Reese. This proves that you all that we were correct in heart. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. And then Ms. Reese is also, Ms. Ritter is also recognition of attaining tenure also. And
Thank God we're not council.
I regret to announce that this is the 2nd month in a row we have to, Dr. Dale Reinecker was a superintendent here at the school district from 1973 to 1983. He was I have to mention he was a retired lieutenant colonel in the Pennsylvania National Guard, and then actually been the superintendent at the Scotland School for Veteran Children, which is a unique institution here in Pennsylvania. But we know him from when he was here from 73 to 83, and he still has family in the neighborhood, and I'd like to express our regrets to his family on his passing. Then we have the PFM group. Jamie left the other Jamie behind. I've been referring to you as Jamie and Jamie ever since
Forget it wrong.
Probably everybody does.
she was going to update us on the bond
Yeah, you can say so.
refinancing opportunities.
Well,
And over to you.
thank you so much. I appreciate it. First of all, it's the first time I've been here since we were retained, so I'm excited to sit at the table and hopefully help out the school district for the near future. Everyone should have a copy of the presentation that describes what we're going to talk about for tonight. As you're aware, when we were doing the interview process, we discussed some of the opportunities that you may have related to your debt issuance. Currently, there are 3 outstanding bond issues that we can look to over the next few months to refinance for some savings. So we've put together at least a platform to provide us what we believe is the lowest interest rates for the type of method and the step process. And I'll kind of touch into that in a second. But if you turn to the first page, and I'm sure we've seen something like this before, but right now we're, of course, at a very low interest rate environment. We've been like this for a number of years, and we would hope to be there for the next few years when you can refinance your other debt. But we're still there. And right now, you have an opportunity to refinance your 2009 A bonds, which remain, your 2009 B bonds, and then what is left of your 2010 bonds as well. Each one of those has different call protections against them. And depending on when you issue new debt, it will allow you the opportunity to refinance them in stages to provide us an effect of lower interest rates by utilizing something called bank qualification. And I'm sure you've heard that word before, but needless to say, the concept's simple. Underwriters have the opportunity to take on debt bank qualified and essentially put it under a different tax window on their books, which allows us to get lower interest rates. So by essentially generating more bank qualification by refinancing your debt in a certain fashion, we can do more of it in one calendar year to get you the lowest interest rates possible for that particular type of refinancing. So what I'm going to at least talk about tonight and recommend, at least in this fashion, as of today, would be a three-step process that allows us to issue 3 sets of bond issues or bank loans, and we'll talk about them in a second, and over a number of months, we can do this by getting us a bank qualified transaction for each one of them. So ultimately, it could be up to almost $20 million bank qualified. And generally speaking, we can do about $10 million a year. But the way we can do this, we can play around with the legality and make it work for you. So take a break for a second, have you turn to the next page. This is page 2. Again, this is your debt portfolio. I've already touched on what we have outstanding. The yellow highlights are the debt that we're going to be looking to refinance, which again is your 2009 A's, 2009 B's, and your 2010s. Again, the combination of all those is close to $20 million. So again, we're talking about a potential of refinancing all that debt over the next calendar year, which in this case would be starting in 2015. Because you can't do anything else this year. Turn to the next page. I think this is the key here. Because we can utilize what we're taking a 3-step process, this is a timeline, and this is an estimate of how we can do this to make it work under the guidelines to make it bank qualified. So my suggestion here is, if you're willing to consider this, and obviously the thought here is the quicker you do it, the quicker we'll be able to lock in rates on a lot of your debt, which means this third phase, which we'll talk about in a second, will be outstanding for a little bit longer. So step 1 and step 2 can happen relatively quickly and based on this timeline. The concept is simple in that sense. We look to come back in your October meeting, assuming you're comfortable with this, get an authorization to move ahead and look to get bank loan RFP out there for local and regional banks. Because step 1 would be a smaller loan, approximately $5 million, and relatively short. We believe if you take a look at both the bank loan and the bond market, we'll be able to look at the grand scope of what the economy and what the financing alternative you can use, and we'll determine which one's the best based on the conditions that we get and the proposals that we get. So essentially, you're getting a 2-for-1 out of this. We'll be, on your behalf, we'll send these out to local and regional banks. When we come back at a meeting in the near future, following October, sometime in November in this case, come back, determine what those interest rates are, and at the same time, we'll see what the bond market is. And if one is better than the other, we'll either proceed with one versus the other. Obviously, in this case, it just comes down to what produces the most savings. It depends on the combination of interest rate that we receive, cost of issuance that are associated with the transactions, and again, some of the conditions that may be involved. So again, our job is to come back, provide you an opportunity to see what those results are, talk about what they are, and ultimately make a decision which way you may want to go. You may not pick any of them, but at least we'll have that opportunity. So really step 1 is come back, we'll talk about it, come back in a month after that, get some bank proposals in, and then make the next step from there. From that point forward, we either entertain that bank loan or entertain a bond issue. We would price that bond issue and do all the necessary steps to do that transaction rather quickly, but since you've done this over the last few years, it should be a pretty quick process since you've gone through the rating process and beneficial statements. We'll work with you on that aspect. But ultimately here, we could probably sell bonds sometime in November or December to allow us for a settlement earlier in the year. And that would be either step 1 or step 2. Finally, once we get to step 3, we wait several months, and that's because of legality and keeping the bank qualification. We end up settling on the 3rd loan back in August. So we'd be able to lock in most of your debt with interest rates with either a bank loan or a bond issue over the next couple months, and do the 3rd step sometime in July. And ultimately, we'd be able to save as much money as possible because we've done this with a bank qualified type transaction. So that's the general timeline. It's not set in stone, but at least this gives you a good guideline on how we think it would make sense to proceed with refinancing approximately $20 million of your outstanding debt, doing it with a 3-step process. What does that mean in dollar and cents? And I think that's the most important thing here. That's on page 4. You can certainly stop me if you have any questions. I know there's a lot here, but what we have is a summary. And again, there's several pages behind this. I'm certainly not going to go into all the detail. You can do that at your leisure or if you want to ask questions on it. But the numbers behind there are the details that make up this page, which is the colored sheet. What I'm talking about here is that three-step process. Because we can do this bank qualified, doing either a bank loan or a bond issue for either one of those, okay, and because we're talking about doing this over a number of months, our recommendation here is to do either the first one with a bank loan or a bond issue, go out and competitively bid it, and we end up getting a overall an interest rate probably somewhere in the 2% range on your first loan, whether that's a bank loan or bond issue, it's going to be somewhere around there. If that were to happen, we generate approximately $173,000 in savings on refinancing about $5 million of your debt, and that's related to your 2009A and 2009 B bonds. That would settle earlier in the year, and that's about as quick as we can do it here to make sure that we meet the bank qualified test. The second step, and this is where it gets, you have a little flexibility here. You can do close to $10 million bank qualified by doing what is called an advance refunding. And simply put, that is refinancing the debt a little bit earlier than normal, but because the call date on these bonds is in November of 2015, you can do that relatively soon, lock in your interest rates essentially at the end of this year, but settle early next year. That'll allow us to essentially lock in most of your debt service savings, which could be as close to $750,000 once it's all said and done between both of those issues. And then finally, we have a third step, and that's essentially a cleanup issue. What we couldn't do or didn't do with the second step, we do as a current period of funding, which would happen in sometime in July or August, ultimately be settled by sometime in August. And that would essentially provide us a monthly savings of about $250,000. So all in, based on current interest rates, and I'm using conservative current interest rates, because I will point out, I ran these numbers utilizing how you were traditionally paying on interest rates, a spread to NMD of about 55 basis points, and that's how you've been pricing over the last couple of years. Conceivably, if we do this through some sort of process or working with us, we hope to get that spread down to a much lower number, which will provide us more savings. And could that go as high as $1.5 million, $2 million? It's possible, depending on what the interest rate environment is at that time. Or, who knows, rates go down, we may not do this at all. But the good news here is, I believe if we do this with a three-step process, we'll be able to get most of your debt refinanced very, very quickly and lock in a lot of the savings very, very soon. As a comparison, the other thing you can do is do the whole thing all at once. We do that something called non-bank qualified, which essentially means you do one transaction close to $20 million. In this case, you pay higher interest rates. However, you lock in all your debt quicker. The downside is because of the higher interest rates and also the call protection will be a little bit longer, there's some downside to that. Based on current conditions, you can save about $717,000. That's a good number, of course, but because we're doing it at higher interest rates, you're essentially getting the same amount of savings as you would get if you added step 1 and step 2 together. So essentially step 3 is like gravy. So that's why the recommendation would be, at this point in time, look into doing a 3-step process, do it that way, and we can see where the market is. And if we do the 3rd step later in the year, hopefully we'll get the extra 250, 300, whatever the amount of savings you can generate. So you can get the best of all worlds, lock in a fair amount of savings, and still have some flexibility in the near future. And I will point out again, I know I've read in the paper, some things going on with regard to transportation center or anything else you may want to do. If you do need to borrow additional new money, we could include that in one of these transactions so we have some flexibility in the near future if you needed to. If you don't, it's okay too. We have some flexibility here on how we do these transactions. So I'll take a breath for a second. Answer any questions.
So what's the advantage of a bank qualified as compared to a bond issue?
Well, it's two different things. Yeah, we have a bank loan and a bond issue. And there's bank qualified versus non-bank qualified. Bank loan versus bond issue is the financing vehicle that you use to sell your debt. Bank qualified and non-bank qualified is essentially a tax lingo. And that essentially means that either the banks or the underwriting firm that you ultimately end up using, the interest rates that they're essentially giving you, they get a benefit from that. And when you're bank qualified under the tax code, the interest rates are lower for you because they're getting a better cost to them. So that's the second part of the question. The bank loan versus bond issue, again, is the financing vehicle that you would determine to use. Traditionally, the district has used bond issue types transactions. They've worked very well over the years. Depending on the market, there's some benefit to looking into bank loans for a few reasons. One, in this case, with step one, because the loan is relatively short and a relatively small size, we found that local and regional banks have been very aggressive on these type of loans. And conceivably, because of that, and because of the fact you're sitting on a lot of cash, you may be able to do a little bit better because of those two reasons on the total savings for the district. So my recommendation here is, especially with step one, is have the flexibility to look at either one of those and then determine which one's best at that time. And you can always say no to the bank loan. That's the best part about it. Because ultimately, if you do get proposals in, we're going to have the banks hold the interest rates for a period of time. And let's say the market changes on the bond side, you can always just stop doing the bond issue and just end up taking the bank loan. So you essentially hedge the market. So it's a really good deal if you do it the right way. And that's the way I would recommend doing it. At least step one, and potentially looking at step two and step three.
Is this a fixed rate?
Yes. Especially with regard to step one, we would be asking banks to give us a fixed rate for the full term. Because it's relatively short, we shouldn't have a problem getting that.
You able to extend these terms out at all, neither? Or
No.
are we limited to the remaining term of that particular issue?
Generally, there's a couple things. One, we generally try to keep them to the same term unless you wanted to shorten debt or so. You have some useful life issues, one, and the second thing is you need to meet the standards of the Local Government Unit Debt Act, which is the state guidelines with regard to debt service. So I need to point back to the previous page, but this will give you an idea of what it means. Turn to what is considered page 2, your debt portfolio. If you go all the way to the right-hand column, which is, there's two boxes. There's the blue box on the top that says number 12 on it, and then underneath that, there's number 24. The top box is your gross debt service, meaning that's the debt service you pay the bondholders at this point. The local effort debt service is essentially what you pay after you get reimbursements. So the state essentially requires that you have to be generally level or declining on your overall debt service. So you essentially can't have balloons on your overall debt service. So anytime you do a transaction and you file with the state, you're showing them what your debt's going to look like post-sale. As long as it meets their standards, they're going to approve it. That's why there's always a waiting period between when you sell bonds, bank loans, until you settle. You could, of course, take your debt, push it out a little bit farther, and extend your debt, but you have to meet the standards of Laguda and also the useful lives of what you're issuing. So you pay a little bit more interest when you extend debt out, of course, because you're have a longer period of time your debt's outstanding. But if you come into a crunch, we've seen issuers in the past, take that debt and kind of make it a little longer. So yeah, those are the type of standards you need to meet. But again, that's one way to consider it. We've run all these numbers to assume we keep it the same, so we're not extending it.
How is the timing of the financing influenced by what you perceive as the direction of the economy? I mean, should we be rushing out to do this or wait?
There's a couple things. I mean, one, you are tied to the fact that you cannot settle on your loans or bonds until 2015 anyway. So we do have some time to watch the market, see where things fall before we ultimately make the determination to go out and solicit bank proposals or bond issues. We certainly see where the market is every day. In fact, we hear all the bad or good news in the economy, or even before, or whatever it may be. That can change things. I can tell you, I was in the market in 2009 when Lehman Brothers was going down, and it didn't matter what kind of credit you had, you weren't getting anyone to lend you any money at that time. So we're certainly going to be watching these things, and if we see something different, we'll do something about it. We'll let you know. But I think that we always say run to do this because we want to lock in interest rates. But you do have a certain period of time where these bonds are the call dates are going to get to a point. Once you go past that, every day that you go past that, you're going to lose money because now you lost that opportunity once you could have refinance. So you kind of fall within where the standards are on your call date. and two, watch the local banks and what the bond market is, and determine which way is the best way possible. So that's what I'll say today. You know, I can be coming back in a month from now and go, oh my God, here's the way it just happened in the market. You know, we should hold off for 6 months. I mean, it's certainly possible. A year from now. So hopefully that answers your question. But,
Yeah, in the past, we've set targets for the net savings.
yeah, I should point that
And
out.
I didn't hear that.
Yeah, I should point that out. I mean, generally speaking, when you do these type of transactions, you'd like to get at least 3% savings on advance refundings, which is what some of this will be. And then you want to get at least 2.5%. That's the industry standards for current refundings. What we would recommend here, because of how the flexibility and structure, if we do come back sometime in October and start with this process, we'd probably do something called a parameters resolution, which I'm sure you've heard that term before, where you essentially have the maximum flexibility. You're telling the state, here's exactly what we can do, very high numbers, very high rates, but set your thresholds on savings, and then we'll be, be watching the market and come back to you with those results. So that's probably the best way to do this, to open up the flexibility should the market change and you know you're going to guarantee yourself savings. Again, based on what we're looking at here, you're going to be over 3% savings on most of these. So we'll hopefully get that point at that time.
Yeah, I see that on page 4.
Yeah, these are all very strong, and again, over the years you've done very well and saved a fair amount of money. And certainly we hope, through the process that we go through, we'll save some money that we're showing here. But we want to make sure, since we're 4 months away from settling on this, you just never know what will happen. I guess I should point out, I did have a conversation with Peter Edelman from Stevens and me. Certainly, the last thing I want to do is tell you how great an idea this is, and then have a lawyer come back and say, you can't do it this way. He and I have spoken, and he's comfortable with this structure and how we do this bank qualified. So we just have the legal side of this reviewed, which is very important. Do you have any more questions on these pages? Again, the pages after this are really just a breakdown on how we've come up with the savings and even the assumed interest rates that we're showing here. Again, I think step 1 is shown right now as a bank loan. It's certainly possible that if you do go out and competitively bid the bank loan compared to the bond market, maybe one is better than the other, and maybe change that. But I think it's a good conservative numbers. In fact, on the way here, I did speak to a regional bank that just won a deal at Canfield School District, which is a similarly rated school district. Obviously not local, but they essentially quoted me just under this rate that I'm showing here. So I think these are good rates on the bank loan side, and hopefully we do this competitively on the banking side. So. Any other questions on this?
Jamie, if I could just sort of summarize it in a sentence,
Please.
which I may not have right. You're proposing a 3-step process to finance about $20 million in 2009 A&B bonds, and we'll save almost $1 million.
And the 2010 bonds as well.
Okay. And then the savings on this 3-step process is about $1 million.
Correct. And that's net of all fees and expenses. And I utilized, again, you can't predict interest rates, but I utilized a similar spread to how you have been traditionally been paying to NMD. And that was the first chart that is showing the interest rate chart. Certainly, we would hope to do better than that, but that's how you've traditionally been pricing over the last couple of bond issues.
With bonds, have you did either negotiated or
Competitive.
competitive? Usually isn't the competitive bid better for the issue?
That's a good question. I know when we did the interview, we put together a packet of financing alternatives, and I'll tell you, half the transactions we've done last year were competitive and half were negotiated. So there's obviously boards, have this decision that they have to make on how you'd like to do the type of transaction and type of method. Frankly, I do feel that by having us involved, I think you're going to get the best transaction possible because we're in the market all the time and we're able to do what we need to do to get the interest rates as low as possible. I don't have a problem with how the board could decide either way. You obviously have a traditionally done a negotiated method with RBC, and actually frankly, previously used a different underwriting firm. And you've done well with that. And certainly by having us involved, I think you can feel comfortable that should we go down that road, we can use our knowledge and industry information from either competitive sales or negotiated sales to prove out that what you're getting is better than what you would get traditionally. And that's what we're going to say you're going to get the best deal possible. Certainly, if you went to competitive nature, that's the other opposite end that allows you to go through all of the bond underwriting firms that are willing to bid on your bonds on a particular day, and let the chips fall where they fall, and you'll know who that is once that's all said and done. That's another way to do it. So I certainly have issuers that have traditionally done a negotiated, and have some that have traditionally done competitive. The township has traditionally done competitive transactions. The school district out in Delaware that I deal with has traditionally done negotiated transactions. They've actually done what we call a hybrid method. And I think we talked about it at our last issue, which is essentially in between. We went out because they traditionally worked with RBC in this case. And at the time when we were hired, they said, why don't you go and ask 6 underwriters for their interest rates and what their costs would be, and report back to us on the particular transaction. And we took that information and analyzed it and came up with a true interest cost, which is ultimately the determination of what the best proposal is. And from there, they used that information to determine who they wanted to use going forward. Actually, as it turns out, RBC wasn't the best in that case, but they were very, very close. And since they had a comfort level with RBC, that board decided to stick with RBC. And since then, we've done some bank loans and some bond issues with RBC, and that's the way it worked. So that's the way they did it. But again, I don't see you going wrong either way, because I feel very confident that since we're involved, you're going to know that someone here's on your side, guaranteed, to tell you that this was a good deal. So I don't know if that answers your question in full. Again, I can tell you certain times you'll probably see where the competitive nature will prove out and show very low interest rates, and if there's a sale on that particular day with a similar type credit, similar type structure, we can show you what the difference in interest rates are and give you a good idea of what it would be. And that's where we come in on that side.
Well, does it help if a district has a very good bond rating, so
Yes.
that when you go out on the market, say to do competitive bids, then people know that this is your bond rating, and therefore you're
It's
pretty
a-
good with the bond,
It's an
with
excellent
paying
point.
up.
Yes. Traditionally, again, the market does determine what your interest rates are, and traditionally, higher credit ratings do better than lower credit ratings, and that's easy to figure out. And I'd rather own the bonds of Exeter School District than some other school district that has a lower credit rating, so they're going to have a lower interest rate. So when you compare that, one versus the other, you're going to have more underwriters interested because of how strong the credit rating is. But on the other side, if you have someone you're working with as well, they are also going to sell your bonds on behalf because you have a very strong credit rating, and you expect them that they're going to do as good a job for you, then with us on your side as well, to make sure you get that rating that you determine is the best at the time. So I do point out that there are certain times where the competitive process works very well, and there are certain times where the negotiated process works very well. Generally speaking, when you have strong credit rating, it makes it easier to sell your bonds because in the end, the bondholders want something with a stronger credit rating.
So we would basically be deciding between the bond and the loan, November?
Yeah, the expectation there is assuming, let's say we came back in October and we re-reviewed where we stand in the market, have a more tighter idea of where interest rates are, and maybe the market changed a little bit. So from there, what we probably do is ask you to give us a nod to say, okay, go out and solicit proposals, or go do a bond or whatever. So from there, then we come back at your November meeting with the results from whatever that may be, determine which one you're gonna do. So, you know, at the same time, we can conceivably do the parameters resolutions in between all that as well.
At that time, we'd be looking where the bond market is, so we determine what we want to do.
One of those, yeah. You know, in this case, I think you look at a step one right now as really the first factor, and again, just given the size, nature, and term, I think it's a really good place to start looking at both bank and bond, and then we can from there write our legal documentation, give you flexibility to do either one of those for step 2 and step 3, and maybe determine, you know, one is better versus the other at those times. Again, I think we can do this to make it work best for you and provide all the flexibility. I think that's the key.
Comments, thoughts?
I would just like to ask Ann for sort of a reaction to this, given that you've done it yourself in the last umpteen years.
It's,
Not
you know,
putting you
pretty,
on the spot
no,
or anything,
it's
but-
pretty straightforward. You know, the information that I had been given back in April and May, and RBC was looking at the bank, the drawdown bank note. Well, now we're closer to the call dates and, you know, the whole scenario changes. You know, I would like to have a further discussion, you know, Jamie, Peter, you know, just to make sure, you know, when you talk about that huge swing in savings, making sure that, you know, how you pick the right maturities and how you maximize that. You know, these issues took place 2009-10 during the stimulus time. I just want to make sure that we're taking advantage because, you know, just, you know, dotting our i's, crossing our t's to see if they're, you know, because obviously he has all the background in our issues. So with them coming on board, you know, it's I think warrants a healthy discussion to make sure that, you know, this is, you know, catching everything that we possibly can in savings.
So would that be a discussion that occurs between you guys and then you report back to the board?
Yeah, I think,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, the plan would be, you know, if we do come back at your meeting in about a month, and again, assuming these meetings are correct, I think you're going to be meeting October 21st, I believe, somewhere around there. You know, we'd come back at the end of your October meetings to really finalize, you know, doing our homework, that's what I say, and really select that making the plan work exactly as we're talking about. And I think, I agree, working with Peter would be a good idea, just to make sure we've got all our T's crossed and I's dotted.
Thank you.
Now, I was looking at your fee structure, and you're talking about 3 different types of bonds, and was it 15,000 or 25,000 or more, is that what?
Yeah, that's a good question. When we were in the middle of talking to Ann, you know, we did provide at least a sample of our, what a contract would look like between us and the district. And, you know, we didn't really finalize anything per se because, frankly, we were just trying to get an idea of what we had. I would say that if the cost of issuance is soft costs per se, and when I say soft costs, that's usually made up of FA, legal, rating, official statements if you do a bond issue, CUSIP numbers, things like that. Those are the ones that would be multiple, that you do 3 steps. The ones that are essentially the same, if you did 1 step versus 3, are whether it's underwriter's discount, you do a bond issue, municipal bond insurance, which you probably won't need, and a couple of other issues. So the big one that really costly is the underwriter's discount, and that is determined by the size of the issue. So it doesn't really matter if you did 3 separate ones or 1, as long as you have the same cost per dollar of discount, that's really not going to change. So what I would suggest here is if we do go down the road of the 3 steps, we put together a contract that the board is comfortable with. Because it's 3 steps, I would have a fee that's, you know, tiered. That's what I say, because we're doing 3 separate transactions for you, and would not be a full amount overall, so it wouldn't be as costly to you, you know, if you did 1 transaction. I was just thinking, whatever
I mean, when you said that whatever the savings would be, is that minus your
It's
fees?
all the numbers that we're talking about are net of all fees. So that $1 million that we're showing is net of everything you pay. So you've already got that built in. And I should point that out. When you look at page 4, the tiered approach versus the one approach, this kind of goes back to the point of the cost of issuance. With option 1, and that's in, remember, the box on the floor is black. I'm assuming, certain underwriters discount fees, which is estimated cost of issuance. Step 1, I'm showing total fees of $60,000. That's because that's as a bank loan. It's far lower. The other two, because they're bond issues, the way these are created, they're a little bit higher. So the total cost of issuance, if you do 3-tier bank loan and 2 bond issues, is approximately $310,000 based on these estimates. Again, looking at what it's going to be. But if you did 1 issue for non-bank qualified, and because you're going to have lower interest rates, higher interest rates, lower savings, the total cost of issuance is $250,000. So it's about $50,000 more of soft costs by having it as a 3-step process versus the 1-step process. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not that much more if you're going to generate $250,000 more in savings. And that's really why the determination makes more sense to do a 3-step process versus a 1-step process. And I will point out, one of the things that's important when you do these bank qualified, the call provisions are shorter. So if you did these as bonds, you're going to have 5-year call protection on bond issues. With bank loans, more than likely we'll be able to get 5 years or less. So if the market does change, we have the right to refinance much more quicker. With a non-bank qualified transaction, it could be 8 to 10 years. So you lose some of that flexibility in refinancing.
So you must have a qualified bank.
We want this bank qualified, and that's really the key here. Really, there's a lot of things that add up that makes complete sense.
I just have a question. I saw last week that in the paper that Town visited a $75 million debt, I think, in your company was
Yes.
involved. And it said you did a variable rate, and there were some people that didn't
I
agree
think
with
there's
that.
a couple of things. I wasn't part of that transaction. I think they started out doing a variable rate transaction to allow for flexibility, I assume, for the near future. I don't know exactly what they did, but I think because of the cost of that project, and then Town was going through some issues with their architects, I think they want to have money available to them and maybe in the future, because it's variable, they can refinance it without having any 5-year call protections against them. That's my guess. I wasn't part of that transaction, so I don't know exactly what the details were on. But traditionally, Town has done most recently competitive transactions with PFM. As an example.
The way I read this, we have until next month's voting meeting to basically decide.
Well,
You're going to be working with Ann and to ensure that we have everything covered, and then we have to make a decision by.
yeah, you can hold off. Certainly, this is not a ticking time bomb here. We certainly think it makes sense to move in this fashion to kind of fit the standards, but if things change, we could always delay things.
Any other questions or discussions with Jamie, so that we can make a decision?
So I guess you check out what the Fed's always going to be doing, right?
Yeah, we're like I said, we constantly have these economic updates every day from we have people that work in our trading desk, and they send them out every day. So we're always getting these type of emails of what's going on in the market. So, yeah.
Looks like you've satisfied everyone's curiosity, so
Well, that's good
you're
stuff.
going to be working with Ann. She's roughly the leader.
You want some time to think more, about all those thousands of pages here. So certainly something comes up between now and then, feel free to call or email me, either through Ann or directly. I'm talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
sir.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Let's
Jamie.
keep rates low, and we'll save as much money as possible.
Okay, next week we'll be considering 2 sets of meetings, or minutes, I'm sorry. Does anyone have any comments on those minutes at this time? We'll also be considering the policy 202 concerning non-resident students.
The requested change was made to the policy.
Change has been made on that.
Yeah.
Any further comments on that at this time?
Well, I do have a number of concerns about this policy going forward. I think it can be very problematic, especially with the new addition that you put in as far as the reason why you're doing this. And you say something like this is to get more money for a district, and yet you say if somehow one of the people that are going to want to come here to our district might have special needs, that we could exclude them. And I think that that's very problematic because we are a public institution. And say they started out in kindergarten and now they're in 5th grade, and we discover that the child needs more than a traditional educational setting, and we then decide, well, we have to go elsewhere, and you do not renew this contract. I think you're opening yourself up to litigation, because we've had them X number of years and it was okay, but now that they're identified, it isn't okay. So I think that's a problem. I think it's also a problem when you have a business owner who owns only 51% of something, and you say you can send 2 of your children here for half the cost, when we have citizens in our district who are struggling, and they applied for working here in the district, and they put in 100 hours of work for $599. It seems very unfair that they have to work 100 hours for a measly $599, and you have a thriving business owner, and you're giving them a 50% tax break, and probably these people don't even have children in our schools. And the last thing is, those children, who knows how many would come, we, as property owners, local property owners, would be paying their share. So we're now paying, we know that many of the residents in Exeter Township have no children, yet they provide the basis for the taxation, more taxation than most of the other, because it's less than 50%. And they don't come crying here. Sometimes they try to get their property reduced, but they don't come asking for half the amount. So I think this is a very problematic idea, and I think we would be opening ourselves up to a lot of litigation.
Have you read the proposal?
Yes, I did read the proposal. I read the ones that you read, yes. And I do not believe that a business comes to a community because of its school system. Property owners come to a community. Any time people are looking for moving into a community, that's the first, and they have children, that's the first thing they look at. They look at how the school is performing, because they want their children to go to an excellent school district. But I doubt, I mean, businesses are looking for consumers, or businesses are looking for the ideal place that they can sell their products to within a certain area. They don't come to a thing because of the school district. I mean, that's, this is, I don't know where, do you have any research on this, Mr. Winter? As to-
I have the endorsed, all right.
I know,
I passed out, I've let you talk. Now, will you let me talk?
Well, I wasn't finished talking.
Well, continue.
I said, do you have any research other than the rated rating person, whoever it was that said that was a great idea? Do you have any basis of research of any other districts that have done this and have brought businesses into the community?
You read your emails.
Didn't
No,
you?
I've got, let's see, I'm going on 27 years now of sales and recruiting. And the first person that handed out glasses at a gas station with hopes of getting more customers had no research. This is a sales technique. Yes, we are not going to be bowled over by people coming to take advantage of this. It is just something, we are a market. Exeter Township is a valid market for any business who wants to come here. The township is taking steps to make us more attractive to have businesses. The average I won't say an average, a business normally pays as much, if not more, taxes because they are sited in a commercial zone where the costs are appraised higher. Therefore, we have, and I gave you the copies of all the businesses in this township existing, and you saw the dollars that businesses pay to conduct business in the township, their property taxes. So if my father paid $4,000 taxes and I attracted two businesses here that were paying $20,000 worth of taxes, conceivably my father's taxes could be reduced because we now had we had $16,000 now that we didn't have before. The whole idea is to get them in. Now, we have the seats available. We're going to charge half of our tuition cost. And this is a blatant attempt to bring more business into the community, to get more commercial dollars, and hopefully gain a little independence from the residential sales taxes. That's all it is. And if you don't want to do it, that's fine. We won't do it. It's an idea, and no one else has come up with any ideas on how we can make, other than going out and begging door to door, which I find humiliating for any government agency. So this is an idea. If the board doesn't like it, it won't be approved. But that is the intent, strictly to gain more commercial dollars and sales techniques. We very seldom have a study on it. I can name 1,000 little techniques. This is not going to bring a business in, but it might be the one thing that tips it. I can drop my kid off on the way to work. I can drop him off at the school, and I don't have to worry about him being at home without anybody there. That's the whole concept of it. Any other comments or
Like I
questions?
said, I think you have a noble intention, Mr. Quinter, but I do think that we are opening ourselves up for litigation, and I think that the citizens do not want to be paying, I mean, there are people struggling to pay their taxes here.
And I'm trying to reduce them, Pat. I am trying to reduce the reliance on residential taxes. Can you get that? Can you see that?
I said,
That if
I
I've got
understand.
commercial taxes, commercial properties paying $40 million in taxes, that's $40 million the residents don't have to pay? Can you
Well,
see that?
Excuse me, I don't think we're gonna get $40 million. But what I'm saying is, this is unfair to the citizens who have, how about all the people who don't have one child in this district, and they're paying the complete cost of their taxes since day one. I go past the church up there on right where the administration building. All the people that are coming there for food because they don't have enough. And now you're taking a businessman, you say, well, he's paying business taxes. Well, so is everybody else that has a business paying business taxes. Just because he has students, that doesn't mean we should give them, because someone else is going to be paying that other 50%. And it's going to be the local taxpayers.
Are there any other comments?
I would just say that I think it's, first of all, it's always reversible, right? I mean,
Exactly.
if it doesn't work or proves to be disastrous, and how disastrous is going to be in 1 year? I mean, seriously. I understand what Pat is saying, but I do think that we have to look at the overall community, and we are just trying something a little different here to see that if we can sort of align with the efforts that are ongoing in the township to try to grow the community, grow the tax base. And I think it's worthwhile. I think we have an out if we want an out. And I appreciate the effort that's been put into it.
Bob, my personal opinion is that there will be very few people that take advantage of this. I think this is one of these things that that it's nice to have one as far as new ideas. If everybody goes to the status quo, you'll never have a new idea. The board has the ability to approve or not. We're filling a seat that it's available, so the fixed costs are already taken care of. It's not costing anyone anything. If it would require hiring a new teacher, building a new school, adding a new temporary classroom, then that's something that obviously we do not want to do. We have the ability to not accept the student, and it does say it is for 1 year, and it's transportation is the parent's responsibility. I mean, the board has every right that you can put this policy in and still never accept one student. So I think this is much ado about nothing, and I think that there is a potential that it could be something to sway one business owner that's on the periphery of our district, and they say, hey, this is a great idea. But I don't think there's going to be a huge rush to buy businesses and bring kids to our township. So I would say let's take a look at it, and I would not be surprised next year if we come back if there is number one child. So.
Moving on. Tobacco use policy. Any comments or questions on that?
Smoking is down.
Bullying and cyberbullying, this is a new one.
Yeah, can I just say
Please
something,
do.
Mr. Quinter? There are no proposed changes to the policy that you approved several years ago. The reason why it's coming before you again is because we are required under the cyberbullying, the bullying law that was passed several years ago to review the policy every so many years and to look to see if there are any updates that are needed. Now, I have reviewed the policy, a few of us have reviewed the policy. I'm going to be reviewing it on Thursday with the principals to see if they suggest any changes. but the policy is very broad and in keeping with the law. And any procedural things that would come out of this policy, procedural changes maybe that we would want to do to update our procedures, such as any new bullying, anti-bullying literature or instruction that we want to provide to the students, that could still be done without touching this policy. The policy is just the skeletal bones of what we generally do, and whatever we put, we change would probably not impact this policy. I think the policy is still current, and I would like to, as I said, run it by the principals. We have our meeting on Thursday, and I propose to do that. And another thing I was going to suggest, because we're talking about bullying programming, and that could potentially be a board goal, is, and that doesn't go for tonight, Mrs. Cook, so I'm not going to spring something new on you. I'm going to ask the principals going forward, when they do their reviews of what's going on in their school, the reports and so forth, I'm going to ask them to include something about what their school is doing to deter bullying or to address bullying as it does occur. So that's one of the things I'm going to do, is to ask the schools to give updates to the board until we do make a decision of where to go from here. So, but in the meantime, the policy, if there's any recommended changes, the next time it comes back to you, it may have some recommendations from one of our administrators. But to me, I think it's still viable, it's still valid, and whatever we choose to do from here on would not affect the broader policy. So at this point, I'm not recommending any changes, but we do need to review it to be in compliance with the law.
Comments, question?
Number 2 in the definition, it says outside a school setting. I was wondering how Mr. Malsley could look at this in light of the actually conflicting judicial decisions about how a school can influence bullying that occurs outside the school setting. I mean, I would argue to have it as strong as possible within the legal limits that we have.
Well, which occurs in or outside of a school setting that is severe, persistent, or pervasive. So whenever there is any incident that occurs, let's say at home, let's say a child is cyberbullying another student through use of social media, and we have to determine the impact that is having on the school environment, how disruptive it is to the students and so forth. And a lot of times it is disruptive, and we do act upon it. But that's what I believe that's still the legal. I'll ask John for his opinion. I don't know the law changing in that regard. I think this is as far as we can legally go. But if there's any update that I'm not aware of, I can certainly consult with John to see.
No further comments? Move on to business functions, Mrs. Cook.
We will be voting to approve a sub-grant contract for implementation of the Individual Disabilities Education Act Part B between the VCIU 14 and our school district. The sub-grantee or contractor for a total amount of $689,785.76 for the project period July 1st, 2014 through June 30th, and authorize Dr. Morgan to execute the agreement. Is this a replacement that is currently in place? As far as,
Yes.
do we know what the cost was last year? And if we,
$640,000 we received, so it's gone up 49,000.
okay, so we're receiving it. B will be recommending voting to ratify the following change orders for the Watton site work project listed below. It's attachment 6B.
Do we have anyone give us an update on how that project is progressing?
We do. Received from Stackhouse and Pitt.
I don't have to need to review these 3 items, or you know what why those are added. Otherwise,
Well, I'd just like to know on those 3 items, is that in effect a cost overrun?
No, I can tell you that the first item there, the compost filter sock, basically we've got erosion and sedimentation control items around the site. You'll see if you've been out to the site, the orange and black tubular sock that's filled with mulch. Okay, at the start of this project, we had a conservationist from the district come out to the site and determine where we're cutting dirt, where we're placing dirt, where we're disturbing the site, to see what kind of conditions might need to be contained with those types of facilities, whether it's the old-fashioned fence or this new sock. As such, he identified a lot of different areas on the site that, for the original drawing, and I'm talking about the one from years ago, it was not placed there. Conservationist district has the option to go out there and require us to place it in places that were never shown on that plan. I question that. We look at the plan, and I can tell you that the level of grading per the original design that you were left with for the last 3 or 4 years is a direct result or cause of where we're placing some of this stuff. Drainage areas changed. So I mean, I can tell you that.
I said overrun. I actually meant I should have said incremental costs. So these were unanticipated costs from your original proposal.
Correct.
Thank you.
And how's the progress on the overall project going, and when would the anticipated end date be?
October 15th is the expected total completion. The final step would be tree planting, and we're looking at doing that mid-October. The progress across the site, I would say, has been very steady, very good. I know there's some nibbling that goes on with little things that keep coming up that Pedrick missed that we are uncovering as we're doing the work properly. But the quality of the work that Empire is doing has been outstanding. Night and day from our experience with the prior contractor. The detail and the care that they're taking to get things done right is just phenomenal. I know the overall price tag is higher than we had anticipated, but we are getting very good value for the work that they're performing.
I would add that the teachers have been very impressed with the steady work of everybody that's been there, and it just seems to be going very quickly, and the students are absolutely loving all those diggers around the building. And the first week or 2 of school, it was hard to keep them away from, looking out the window. So some teachers even incorporated that into a writing assignment just to get it out of their system, but they are really enjoying it. So
I will say that we have looked at some cost savings items from the original contract. Some grinding work that was in the amphitheater. We took a detailed walkthrough there, looked at, do we really need this? Is it going to add the value that it's going to cost us out of the contract? We anticipate, once the paperwork's all done, approving a deduct change order in the neighborhood of $17,000 for not doing that amphitheater grinding, which will not really give us that much more when we're done. That offsets most of these costs that have popped up over the top, on the top. Long run, Aristides, go ahead.
I think we're out of the ground at this point, and that's where a lot of these upfront, I think the first actual shovel that went into the ground, we found $33,000 worth of stone underneath the parking lot. I kept telling them, stop digging, because I don't want to see what else is buried by the previous contractor. I think we're past that stage. There's probably some up and down, but I think overall we're looking at a balance as far as adds and deducts as we move forward.
A lot of the things we've worked with the Conservation District, and kind of, even though they're adding costs in terms of silt sock to us, they're actually not necessarily giving us credits or deducts back on the work that we're doing, but there's areas that we had built-in allowances to move things, to move dirt, to change topsoil, to change the relief of the site, that they're going to allow us to not touch. That will come back not as a credit, but as a reduced billing at the end of the contract. So net, I think we will be in the right direction. We still haven't seen all the things we're going to bump into. We already anticipate that our next meeting with the Conservation District is going to provide more silt sock requirements for us. We all understand that as soon as he sees what we're doing, that's going to be a requirement. But it gets to the end of the project in the right direction. I know Stackhouse is going to be calculating what we think all of these things are, and Empire will probably push back a little bit, but we'll come to a good negotiation for a reduced overall cost.
And I think some of these things that we're talking about, where Ken was talking about with meeting with the Conservation District, that they've been very good to work with. Empire is very good to work with as far as determining how to get the school district what they should be getting that looks good but doesn't cost additional money. It resolves issues that are on the site today, but doesn't end up breaking the bank on things. So I think there's a conscious effort from everybody involved to make sure that you guys get what you want, what you deserve, and with obviously costing money. I did want to bring up the one interim deadline. I don't know if you brought it up. Originally, the project was slated to be wrapped up by September 15th. The contractors stated that they are going to try to pull away from the building by that date so that their operations are further away from the building proper and interference with students and pick up and drop off. So that's still their stated goal, to get away from the actual building and parking areas by that date.
Excuse me, the compost filter stock, are they going to be composting food? What are you composting?
It is, it's actually just almost like a nylon net tube. It's filled with mulch and like compost, like you would get at at a soil depot. It's basically organic material. It's instead of I don't know if you've ever seen that filter fence. It's basically black fence with wooden stakes every few feet. That basically, when water washes down over exposed dirt, you get all that mud and soil in that water. It's a barrier so that mud doesn't flow across onto neighboring properties, onto roadways, doesn't contaminate waterways or go into storm sewers and clog up pipes. All that compost stock is instead of that type of fence, it's just a barrier to protect or maintain all of that silt or washout from spilling out onto areas you don't want. So that's
And the idea is that when that barrier is served its purpose and no longer is needed, you pull the plastic out, everything else there naturally biodegrades on site.
Oh, I thought you were doing composting like with,
You could.
with garbage from
Get the kids doing.
from the food and things, but no, that's not what you're doing.
No.
Thank you. Letter C will be, oh,
Two items.
okay, sorry. Oh, okay. We'll be voting on this annual service agreement with Siemens Industry for $26,180 to support and maintain the building automation systems at Jackson Walk and Watton Creek. It's a 1.7% increase over the prior year. And lastly, we'll be voting on approving AEM Architects to complete the conceptual design for a new transportation center at Watton Creek Elementary. The fees related to this fees of work are as follows: schematics programming $18,000, land development $38,700, and design development $24,000. Fees are based on the AEM proposal provided on April 7, 2014. Hopefully, Mr. Brady will be here next week to discuss that.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Bender.
Can I just, I'm still struggling with this whole project. I was looking at the minutes from 2012 when we looked at bus outsourcing. And at that time, I don't think that there was, when that analysis occurred, where you now got proposals from several different organizations, we didn't factor in any cost savings, any upgrades to the bus center, at least that's what the minutes said. So at this point, it almost seems to me that the board needs to consider the outsourcing of the bus transportation services in the context of a $3 million investment in the creation of a new bus center. I don't know if how anybody feels on the board. I know we probably don't want to revisit the issue, but we are looking at investing $3 million in a bus center, which would dramatically change the proposal that we got 2 years ago regarding outsourcing of transportation.
I think, Mike, if I'm not mistaken, and maybe some of the board members will remember this, who were there, we did discuss at one of the meetings just what you said, and the thought was that, well, if someone else came along and took over our services, they would face that same need that we eventually would face to upgrade the site or upgrade the facility. And that cost, they would then bear that cost, which would be passed on to us in terms of a higher fee for their services. Does anybody else remember that discussion?
It was thought to be a wash, only because David had, whomever the contractor might have been, would have to figure in the cost of storage anyway. And we more or less kept it out of the equation. You're correct, we kept it out of the equation because it was considered to be somewhat of a standing cost. Somebody's going to have that cost.
Okay, so in effect, what you're saying is that regardless of who's running transportation for the district, we still need to have a transportation center.
If we have it and they use ours, no, let's say we don't have one. We don't go to the bus bar.
Right.
So we bring in ABC or IU, the IU, whomever. The current site might be adequate for them to keep it. I don't know. But they're going to need a site to keep the vehicles. I don't know. What does the board feel? Do we want to go down this road again as to how much it would influence the cost?
Can I just to go back to the RFP and the specifications, in the specifications, we said you will use our facility because it was central. We didn't want to get to the issue of going to an echelon down the road and all the extra mileage. But also as part of, we would lease it to the contractor. They would be responsible for repairs, maintenance, and if they were to do any structural changes, they would be responsible for that as well. So if you're saying, was it apples to apples? I'm not, they all viewed the facility. They knew what, or could project what might be needed over the next years, but it was as-is condition. The contractor, they would be responsible for any improvements that they would want to do on that current site. That's the way it was written. But did we include $110,000? We didn't know that 2.5 million at new debt that could be used for a new transportation site equates $110,000 in debt service. No, that wasn't included, but they had every opportunity to include any improvements in their fees. And if you build a new transportation site, and down the road you decide, for whatever reason, let's look at contracting out again, then you lease that facility to the contractor.
But if you're building a new facility for $3 million, you're gonna lease it for a lot more money than you're gonna have to lease it for a lot more money than we lease our facility now.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that obviously that would play into the rates. I mean, the overall, the end result of that RFP was that there wasn't significant savings in the 3-year period and 5-year period. The only one where there was some savings was the BCIU, but they were only offering $900,000 for a fleet, which is worth $3 to $4 million. So there's probably a lot behind those numbers, but you know.
Because we have spent $250,000 on buses in the last year, so.
Right.
I mean, that's $250,000 we wouldn't have spent. And you could look at your bus fleet, your 60 buses, which will probably on some sort of a rolling schedule. I think every 10 to 12 years, I think I saw was the lifetime of the bus. So we would probably be spending, I know from reading the minutes that we would have, the savings would have been mitigated over 5 years roughly, is sort of what the conclusion of the board was.
Mm-hmm.
But we weren't rolling in $2.5 million, and we weren't rolling in $250,000 a year that it would cost to replace buses, and we weren't rolling in the operational costs of the new bus center. I'm not trying to be difficult because I'm cognizant of the fact that there are also, potential jobs on the line as well. 65 jobs or something like that. I just wanted to throw it out to see if the board thought that factoring in those additional costs would make a difference in the decision that we would make regarding the outsourcing of bus services. I think there are 17 districts in Berks County, 15 outsource their bus services. The only 2 that don't are Wilson and us. So, that's my 2 cents. Thanks.
Thoughts, anyone? We'll discuss it Monday, or next Tuesday. We were aware of the fact that the bus barn would need to be replaced. It was more or less regarded as,
We were sort of pushing it down the road at that point.
Yeah, I just opened up a spreadsheet. We did include the cost of vehicle in our analysis comparing, district-owned versus BCIU. Obviously, that cost to a contractor goes into the rates that they charge. And I'm not, I'm open to anything really in this environment. But I just wanted to clarify we did include the cost of $300,000 a year.
I mean, we would pay for, and I flipped back and forth, I think 20 different times on this. Because I've gone back, because I go up and down that road all the time, but whether we have those buses or someone else does, we're paying for them, period. I mean, it's just, do you want to care for the buses? Do you trust your people to care for them as opposed to someone else? Because regardless, you're going to pay for the wear and tear and that equipment for those buses, whether you're leasing them back. And you could take a look at it, and again, do you play around with the numbers, say, with a one-time hit of what we take the hit on the buses, selling them back, is the cost of the bus garage. So you could look at it that way. So the bottom line is the facility we have is a piece of crap. If we're going to be in the bus business, I think it's something we have to think about. But, or do we just say, we're going to continue to operate out of there, and we're going to do the best that we can, as long as we can, and that's all we can do. I mean, that's really what it's going to come down to.
Yeah, at the time, I had spoken with a number of districts that had just gone through the process and had given up their buses. And I remember, I remember one guy was really clear. He compared it to cable television. You know what? They get you in for a great deal. They buy your buses, and now you're done. And the prices escalate beyond anything reasonable, and they've got you because they've got your buses. I personally want to keep that money in the community, I want to keep those jobs in the community, and I would like to see us move forward here and do what we need to do in order to make that, not that it's not a top-notch run organization, but I think we can make it better.
I think at the time, the board also had some concerns about flexibility and control over your own fleet and flexibility to do different things, to adjust to different situations. I can't recall exactly what we discussed, but.
It was, Dr. Martin, it was like after-school
Yeah,
activities and
after-school.
like kids going on
Field trips.
field trips and things, and that was all extra when you had a private contractor. And we found that, we could manage that a lot better within our own district.
Ready to move on? Recommended.
All right, personnel, our first item is a resignation under Part A. Part B, we have a number of appointments, certificated staff, substitute teachers, both certified and non-certified, 3 support staff, 4 extracurricular staff, and 5 school health services. Any questions? Yes.
David, was, just as an example, were the health services individuals already hired?
Dr. Martin?
They're not
I don't think
technically
so.
hired. After you approve them, we send them a letter saying thank you, because basically they're doing us a favor. It's a public service. We pay $10, $3 a student for the dentals, and we pay $10 for the school physicals.
What
Those are
about the sports physicals? That's different.
That's different.
Yeah.
Would you like more details?
Well,
in terms of
what I was gonna say is, for next week, I'll probably make an issue out of the issue that I raised at the curriculum meeting. I've spent a reasonable amount of time looking at the Pennsylvania Public School Code. And I'm not sure if it's Section 5 or Chapter 5 or Amendment 5, but it seems in a number of cases, we're getting these voting assignments backwards. We should be voting on these people before they are being offered the jobs. I understand, except in emergency cases, but here's a case in point where we probably knew that we were going to need a doctor and a dentist this year. Why wouldn't have this been moved to the summer?
This is the time of year we typically do this on an annual basis, and we
But it's-
don't use these.
We haven't used their
We don't-
services.
we
It's
don't
usually
use
in the
them yet.
spring of the year when we do
Yeah.
dentals
But
and
you would have to bring them to the table before they were hired.
That's, what do you mean? I'm not sure I follow you.
Well, it says here for the school year 2014-15, which has already begun.
Yes, but the timing of their arrival here and their work here doesn't happen until later in the school year.
Okay. Well, then let's use the certified staff, the long-term subs. Did we hire that individual?
Yeah, we had that position filled. And, let's see, this was Ashley's, this was
The young woman that left for a contract.
Amy
Yeah.
Davis. Amy Davis. This was filled. She's actually
With board approval.
started, went to the new teacher orientation for 2 days,
And then quit,
and then quit.
necessitating someone being in the classroom.
No, I understand that. But what I'm looking for is that if we are going to be hiring somebody for the school year or for a position, I would hope that the board votes before they are actually hired. And I can bring up situations that have happened within the past year where I know that that has not happened with professional staff.
Well, I would like to, if you have specific situations, I'd like to be able to research that to determine why that happened, because I know that between Betty and myself, we typically will look very carefully at that and make sure that we have board approval before we start someone, even if we have to put someone in as a day-to-day sub and then move them to the long-term sub after approval, but we need to have body in the classroom.
After this meeting, if we could, Bob, you and I, could just mention that individual's name that we actually talked about in executive session and then voted on afterwards.
Okay,
And I'll give you that example.
okay.
And again, I think that it's running afoul of what Pennsylvania Public School Code is suggesting as the responsibility.
Okay, well, I'd like to have Betty stick around for that one as well then, if it's an employee.
Okay.
I just wanted to, oh, do you have something to say?
Well, I was gonna move on to the next item of the
I
agenda.
was just going to clarify something that, I wanted to ask you something, Mr. Chair. Are you talking about where it says, beginning August, like, number of these, beginning August 28th, when this is now September? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah.
That kind of thing?
What I'm talking about is that when we are going to be hiring somebody for a period of time in the future, we shouldn't be voting on them unless it's an emergency after they've already been hired.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
Well, it's according to what I understand, and I know our solicitor isn't here, but it appears to be somewhat in violation of what Pennsylvania code suggests.
Well, I think some of the problem is that if the personnel committee does not really meet behind closed doors, and Dr. Bender is the chairman, I happen to be on the committee, but the only time we see things is like what you see things. So I think that might be a problem too, when you have all these employees and yet the personnel committee does not know about who's being hired except at this, at this workshop meeting, which is 1 week before the voting meeting.
Well, I would argue that when a person is duly hired by the school board and that person begins the job as expected and then suddenly quits without any notice, and we're left to put a person in the classroom, we can't say, well, let's just wait until after the board voting meeting to fill that position. We cannot do that. And there has to be some level of trust of the board for us as the administration to be able to put a good quality teacher in the classroom and then ask for your ratification after the fact. And that, I consider that to be an emergency situation as described by Dr. Tamura.
We're going to discuss this after the meeting, and in your case,
I understand your point.
it is not the personnel committee's responsibility to be a human resources office. It's the personnel committee's responsibility to lay down objectives and overviews, not to micromanage the personnel. So,
Then actually, the personnel committee really is a kind of.
unfortunately, the way you see it is not the way the policies are written. So, Dr. Bender, if you want.
Our last item of the staff conferences, letter C, if there are any questions about those 1 through 7.
I'm sorry, I don't have any questions. I meant to ask a question regarding support staff, and was just wondering, I think I just answered my own question, never mind.
That completes personnel.
Thank you, Dr. Bender. Student functions, do you have
Now, under student functions, letter A is just reporting field trips that are within the 60-mile radius, and then we'll be approving 3 field trips outside the 60-mile radius. Just want to note that these French exchange students are getting around already. Breakfast, Gettysburg. And we'll also be voting on a recommendation to approve an agreement with the Chester County Intermediate Unit for services to be rendered by the Brandywine Virtual Academy for full-service online courses and computer technology management. And that contract will run from August the 1st to June the 30th, 2015.
Excuse me, before I move on, I mean, that's a good example of what we were discussing in.
Yeah, and that's the same organization that we had approved for last year.
Yes.
And we just got the contract. So without a contract, I don't have a document to present to the board. So with contracts, a lot of times, you know, we continue our business with the same organization and you get the contract after the fact, whenever it comes in the mail. So, and actually, although the contract reads from August 1st, there were no students involved in the month of August, so I'm not quite sure exactly why it even reads that way.
I was under the impression that was an ongoing
Yes.
agreement anyway, that
Yes.
we wouldn't need to renew.
Well, the reason why you renew it every year is that their fees can sometimes change. And that gives them an opportunity to adjust their fees according to, you know, what they forecast as their cost for their,
But they should give us sufficient notice then.
you know,
Not-
I got the contract in mail last week, so this is the soonest I could view it. And
Did the fees change?
the fees did change. I think they're about $30 more per course this year. And again, the Chester County Intermediate Unit does not make a profit on this program. The idea is to break even with the costs.
On the trips for the foreign exchange students, did we get compensated for that, or is it just part of being a host?
It's part of being a host. I don't think we receive any compensation.
Dr. Miller, I want to ask, I'm Dr. Morton, I'm not Dr. Miller. I want to ask you, have we gotten any idea of this virtual academy, what their scores are in relation to the other cyber schools that we know of?
They have the highest scores among all of the cyber schools, but they're still not anywhere near our scores. So although they provide a very good service for what they do, and I believe that they are more attentive to the students, and if a student is not engaging in the course content, they will contact parents. They do a lot more than they do what they can. But you still have students at home sort of left to their own devices to go online and do their work, or to maybe go online and not do their work. So unless there's somebody at home who's going to be sitting on the kids, or unless the kids are with a teacher in a classroom, then you're not going to have the same level of success as we enjoy at our schools.
I was gonna ask for B3 for the lacrosse trip, leaving on a Thursday.
Yeah, I think it's like a day and a half.
Friday the 10th is an early dismissal.
Yeah, so that's the half.
Are they leaving on Thursday during school or after school?
Let me just check that for you, Dr. Bender.
Or
It's
you
pretty
can have it
loud.
for next week, that's right.
Yeah, okay, well, I could probably look at it real quick while you're moving on.
We'll also be asked next week to approve an Act 48 program placement agreement between the school district and Glen Mills Schools for alternative education services, and an agreement placement at Hogan Learning Academy for a special education student.
Any questions for student functions? Or any other matters we brought before the board?
I know that during the curriculum meeting, there was also another issue that we discussed concerning textbooks, a particular area of textbooks that we were purchasing. But I don't see those on the voting agenda here.
It'll be on next week's. It didn't make this report for some reason. I just sent an email to Donna to make sure it gets on there.
Yeah, Donna was on vacation and Mary Ann prepared the agenda, so I don't know if there was.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm
That's
not-
probably going to be another where I'm going to recommend that the board seriously consider or abstain from approving that. Again, it seems like it runs in reverse of the approval process that I understand. I understood that there was some pressure from a vendor.
And I would agree with you on that one. There was really, that should have been submitted earlier, and we have had occasions where we've denied the teacher and said, you need to wait until next year because you didn't submit your textbook on time. And we like to have it approved in June so that purchases can be made with the new budget year beginning July 1, and the books would be ready for the students in late August. So I would agree with that one.
I'll be speaking to the curriculum council, the department heads on Monday, to put together a timeline of different actions that need to occur when proposing new courses and adopting new textbooks, with June 30th being the deadline for proposing new textbooks, so they won't be approved, they won't be brought to the board.
Yeah, I'm looking at my minutes from the meeting here, and Mr. Kane at the time said that the books were sent prematurely, and no money has exchanged hands, and they were prepared to return the books if the board did not approve the textbook.
Bob, at the risk of delaying Mrs. Cook for a minute or two here, since the three horsemen of the apocalypse are here from the high school, I wanted to have a little bit of a discussion about school resource officers and Exeter Police and whether or not we've ever considered having a presence in our facility at the high school in the same way that they have a physical presence at other high schools around Berks County and not just the city of Reading, and whether or not we've ever investigated having police presence. The recent vandalism issue that came up is, having them positioned in there and known to the students, would that have compelled people to provide them with more intelligence? We're reviewing a cyberbullying policy that, as an end result of something that's really bad, has law enforcement involvement. I know that we had a state police, or I believe we had a state police assessment of the safety and security of our facilities, and I just wondered whether or not we've considered having any sort of a presence of a police officer in the district for any period of time. We no longer have the DARE program that's provided for students either, and just curious as to whether or not you guys had any sort of opinion on that or any feeling either way on whether or not there'd be value in having a regular law enforcement presence in the high school.
In the time I've been here, it's not, and this is my 8th year here in the district, I don't recall we have really investigated that. From time to time, it's been, mentioned when we were working with the Exeter Police. But taking a serious look at it in terms of how strong the need is, what the cost would be, we've never done that. I think probably part of the reason we've never done that is we do have such an excellent working relationship with the local police department that, to the point where they structure their patrol routes to make sure they can get to any building in the school district in a matter of minutes. So, but I don't recall any serious discussion.
And also, what about Mike? I mean, he's not police, but.
Well, yeah, we do have an office for Mike Gall, who's a junior probation officer. But Mike is in our building less and less these days, which is a good thing, because he has very few students at Exeter on his caseload. He has many more now from other districts. There was a time when he would be there 3 or 4 days a week. Now we see him 1 day a week, maybe a second day. So he's not as much much of a presence as he was, just simply because the demands of his caseload are taking him elsewhere, which speaks well of us and our student body.
Yeah, I think traditionally, the arrangement with communities and police departments is 50% the cost of the officer. It gets very expensive. The 3 that we had at Reading, the prorated thing for the last 4 months of school was well over $500,000.
Well, I know for a fact it wouldn't cost us that next. I know that it wouldn't cost us that. Again, I'm just throwing it out there. I believe that there's, and no significant issues at the high school, and I believe that they're well handled till something happens, and then, then you begin to look at and question it, and I know we've looked at your camera system, we've done assessments on our emergency preparedness and sort of those activities. You had a nice event this summer where the Run, Duck, and Hide, or whatever it was called, event. But it's just, I think it's something that, if you guys are in the building, so you guys are in the position to determine whether or not that would be of value to have a discussion and just sort of explore maybe more formally whether or not there's value in that or not. I'm not pushing either way. It's just, as I thought about some of the issues that you've had recently, would there be value in somebody who is, not having the DARE program is sort of I think, kind of bothers me a little bit. I don't know if there's
Funding issue.
yeah, if there's drug education in the district, and if it's as effective as when a DARE officer was there or not. So I don't want to hijack the meeting. I know that this is.
No, I don't think, I don't want to speak for the administrators in the audience, but I don't think anybody would argue that there would be value in having a police officer in the high school all day. The question is, can we afford it? Is that something we can afford?
So what happened to the DARE program, Dr. Tomar?
The funding got cut, yeah, it was just a funding issue. It used to be funded,
Yeah, too, right? The officer from Exeter.
the officer?
He left. He moved to
Yeah,
But
that could be.
there were,
Yeah, I remember
there
that.
were other officers trained, but police funding got cut,
Yeah.
and they didn't replace some of the officers, so they didn't have the manpower or the funding.
Because I do think your concerns, the DARE officers addressed a lot of those, even though they came into to the schools, but they did have a presence with the kids.
Yes, they
and I
did.
think I don't, did the state cut it or federal, or who cut that program?
I'm not sure if it was state or federal monies. I don't know if you're aware of that, Don, or the DARE
At
fund.
one time, there were funds that we could get and police could get that finally narrowed down to just the police department could apply for them. I don't remember if they were state or federal, but then those dried up.
Well, that would be something good that that the governor could do for education.
That must be it.
Rather than, some of the other things.
I was just going to say that's my day job. So I was going to confirm that there will be no added value in terms of the relationship between Exeter Police and myself, and Mr. Dean especially. They provided amazing coverage and support for what we do. If there's any value, it would be more exposure for the students to get to know them and to provide additional help working with the students. They do an amazing job day after day. The folks that answer the phones recognize our voices. They are excellent. If there's any additional help to work with students, I'm all for it. If we can support it, but I know for a fact that we have a great relationship with them on a day-to-day level.
Don, I'm wondering if that initiative would help get a Safe Schools grant funded to offset the cost of the security officer or police officer.
There have been grants that have come along for school resource officers, but we didn't apply for them because even though the grant money was there for the first year,
Right.
eventually we had to prove that we were paying the full amount.
Right.
And with everyone looking at jobs and adding new positions, we never went forward.
Yeah. And that's basically the bottom line. Doesn't mean we can't think about it. Yeah.
Are you thinking the benefits of the officer-student relationship, and exposure to the uniform, and sort of?
You can never, you always have 2 months security until you need it, and you don't have, you never have enough. And it doesn't matter how many you have or how many you don't have. On my security at the hospital, sometimes we think we're overstaffed and something hits the fan and then you need 5 more people. So I think it's just a balance, and I know that you guys talk about it, and I know that you plan, and you know, it's just a question, seeing the 3 guys here tonight to just see whether or not they would see, not rushing to spend taxpayer money on putting, you know, a police officer into school if there's not truly a need and a value to the district. It was just, you know, I was thinking of several issues most recently, you know, that vandalism, that criminal act really wasn't vandalism that will occur, or that did occur, will be solved by somebody talking to somebody. You know, there's people in that building who know what happened. So
I think if the question is intelligence, you kind of brought that up. You know, the kids have such a rapport with their teachers, with our student assistance program coordinator, with the administration, office secretaries, the nurse. The rapport is there, so there's that level of safety that if someone felt comfortable sharing with somebody, there's plenty of people for them to share with. I don't know that that would be a specific added benefit. Obviously, in another dimension that you talked about is the capacity to respond in a given situation, and that would certainly be a huge asset in that respect.
Well, you know, you can have somebody sit around for 181 days and not have a need for anything. I hear what you're saying, and I'm saying, I just wanted to throw it out there. I believe that the district is safe. I believe that there are good, solid plans in place, and there's good training for the teachers. My sense is that you have things certainly under control at the high school. You know, since I sit on the board and I have a bully pulpit here, I thought I'd bring it up and just see what the reaction was. So, thank you.
Ms. Cook.
Thank you. Well, I just want to summarize a few things on here about Watton Creek this year. Of course, you heard about the building project and how excited all the kids were to see all that equipment there on a daily basis. But I took notice, especially during our meet and greet and the open houses that we had for new students right before school started, that there's this kind of pervasively positive responses and comments coming from parents that are new to us and a lot of our veteran people as well. They're just very happy to be in Watton, and they really like how we've done things with the coffee conversation and Kleenex, how they had the opportunity to meet their teachers, and also excitement about the math program. A couple of questions about that for me, but at the meet and greet. But it seems to be just a wonderful place to be right now. And looking at our professional development, I did want you to note, of course, that our focus is the math program, and that Heidi did come to our first staff meeting at Watton, and she arrived there on time to actually give the math presentation, as was witnessed by our assistant superintendent and assistant superintendent. So we had a little party going on there during that presentation.
Show up.
But you know, I think that the teachers are very positive about Deb Dawson and Heidi coming around to interact with them and get feedback and answer questions. They were just at our building this morning, working with 3rd grade and 2nd grade, doing some walkthroughs and seeing how things were going. And then also, I just wanted to make you aware that Julie and Heidi did create a web page and a pamphlet that we've handed out to parents. The information for the web page is in the pamphlet, so that they can just scan it, and it takes them right to the web page so they can get information about spelling from Julie and math from Heidi. I want to also make you aware that I changed our instructional aid support a bit so that our instructional aides are now in the classroom during portions of the math time so that they can get acclimated to the new program and how to assist the students and the teacher with the implementation of the new program. So I'm going to jump down to school partnerships. We received $1675 from Target this year, and I also have a few other things. I know that we got $2,400 from Maydays and $3,100 from Box Tops for Education, and Giant was $1,800 this year. I have my first APT meeting tomorrow for this year, so that's why I didn't have it all in the report. But I know that some of you like to see that information. And I did apply for a grant from Walmart, and that has been tentatively approved, but I haven't seen the check yet, so waiting for that happen. We're continuing to offer Science Explorers. We have an assembly to kick it off on 9/18. And at that assembly, I've invited State Senator Judy Schreink to come because we have a Junior Miss winner in our building, and there is supposed to be some government interaction there. So they're having Judy Schreink instead of coming here. Sorry, guys. But it's supposed to be local government and state government. And her name is Elia Wise, and she will be going to California to compete in the national competition.
What grade is she?
Yeah.
She's
She's
a
fourth.
teacher?
Fourth grade. Fourth grader. Student.
Oh, fourth grade teacher.
Student. It's a junior miss. Page 7 to 9.
That really is junior.
Yeah.
It
really is.
Fantasy ground. I didn't know they went that young.
Neither did I. So she will do her, she puts on her crown and sash and all that, and she does an introduction of herself. That's what she'll be doing at the assembly, and apparently she does the same thing at the national competition.
Is there a talent competition?
I don't know. But I know she's involved in gymnastics.
Okay.
We're also continuing Girls on the Run. Diana Bogus is our liaison for that, and that starts in about a week or so. Let's see. Oh, we have gone back to having the fire safety house. Some of you may know about the fire safety house. We stopped the Stearnsville Fire Company used to do that for us in all the elementary buildings, but they did away with it about maybe 8 years ago. Do you remember? Anyway, so Terry Francis and with Stan Boyer will be reinstituting that. They're going to Jacksonville first. They're going to Lorraine next, and they're going to come to me last, so maybe some of the construction equipment will be out of there. And what they do is they teach the third grade classes about fire safety and how to evacuate this fire safety house safely. And just one other thing that was new to us at Awatin, Boscov's came and did their fall photo shoot for the kids, and that was in the newspaper a couple of weeks ago, where some of our students were in there as well, and they did the advertisement in our building, so that was over the summer, so. All right.
Questions, comments, Mr.
I think you skipped over those very high PSSA scores.
They speak for themselves.
They're very high.
Yes.
Just on the right-hand side, we have a 2014 and 95.73%.
Yes, that's
What does that mean? I don't see
advanced
the,
and proficient. At 95.73% advanced.
It went to the next line.
Oh, the word science.
Word science is underneath the word 2013 OCV.
oh, okay, thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions?
I would just like to applaud their involvement in Girls on the Run. I don't know how familiar people might be with that organization, but it's a pretty impressive organization started by a former administrative assistant at RAC who uses running and exercise to build self-esteem among preteen and early teen girls, and it's a great program, so congratulations.
Thank you. I know Jacksonville is doing it. Is Lorraine doing it? I don't know if they are. One thing I did forget to mention, I'll get Julie off the hook here. The math parent forum is at Owaton Creek on October 15th. I looked up that date just to let you know in case any of you would like to attend. Thank you.
I have a question. On the left-hand side, it says 2013 Watton Creek reading, and then underneath it has science. Which is this? These 93.2?
I don't see what you're reading.
I think there's a wraparound on those.
Or it should be over here. It's, yeah.
Science? Oh, science should be over there. Oh,
It's
okay.
not- I'm sorry, it's not
Oh, okay.
skipped on mine. Mine's,
That's
okay.
reading.
Okay, I didn't know.
It's split.
So then you're saying the science was 95.73, is that what you're saying?
Mhm.
Oh, okay. Is that anything to do
More
with?
than 60% advanced and proficient.
Yeah, that's great. That's fantastic. Do you think the science after-school program has anything to do with it? It helps a little, right?
It's
little bit
probably a
helps,
little
right.
too soon to tell. We've only done it for 1 year, and we've had high
That's
science scores
consistent with
before.
our past scores as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I couldn't figure that one out.
I was going for 99%, so.
That's good, if you can get it.
Okay?
Very good. And, you talking about the tax bureaus? Is that gonna be next week or you gonna?
No, I'll give you the handout. I summarized it. The reason I'm updating you, I am the representative for the EIT Bureau and the TCC. For those of you that aren't aware, back in 2008, Act 32 came into play where each county was required to have a TCC, well, most counties except Lancaster County. And the whole goal was to cut down the number of tax collectors to save costs, be more efficient. So since then, the TCC and the Berks EIT Bureau really are in a contractual agreement, but they're separate entities. They have their own board meetings, their own board, obviously, their own budget. And the whole goal here of merging is really to cut down on costs that are duplicated in terms of auditing, solicitor costs, et cetera. So apparently the discussion has been going on for a few years, but it's heated up over the past several months. And at this point, there have been questions about, well, can the TCC board, going down with issue number 2, govern both the TCC and the operations of the Bureau? Act 32 doesn't impose any restrictions on a merger to create a tax collection bureau. I mean, Lancaster County itself is evidence. They were not required to have a TCC because they collected for all of the districts, municipalities in that county. For Berks County, at the time, Reading and Boyertown were not part of the Bureau. So because of the way the law read, we had to establish a TCC. Also, they verified with DCED that a tax collection committee need not have a separate board if the tax bureau is created. So the way they're going about this is to purchase the assets of the Berks EIT Bureau. There's been a lot of discussion, I'm down on letter B now, about this. Fiduciary responsibility, if you're, selling your assets, but the bottom line here is that a compromise is being discussed, and we have another meeting at the Bureau on September 23rd. You know, in reality, it's the same organizations. You have school districts and municipalities that are represented on the EIT Bureau, and you have those same folks in the TCC. It makes perfect sense to merge the two, but of course, there's two different solicitors trying to protect the EIT Bureau Executive Committee, and also at the same time, the TCC doesn't want to get into a situation where, you know, where it becomes too complicated. And the other issue, see on the reverse, is insurance and indemnification. Some of the members of the executive committee of the Bureau are concerned about some class action suit, someone saying, well, you know, how can you merge? There's no statute. Well, it's just common sense that really you have the same players, you're looking to cut costs, and it's just very logical. In the agreement, there may be some indemnification and also maybe some insurance will be purchased to cover any occurrences before the merge happens, if there's things that personnel have done in the Bureau to cover any suit that may come before them. So what's next? There's a meeting September 23rd. Just got the email at 6 o'clock tonight where the Bureau will review the TCC's proposal, counter proposal, really to iron out the final terms of the agreement and how to sell the assets, and also the indemnification piece. And the merger, we also, item B there, they want the school board to approve the transaction. I did receive a resolution along with this email at 6 o'clock where the school board, as a member of the school district, would approve this and then authorize me to approve the merger, in the future. So the meeting's on the 23rd. I will update the board after that. Possibly the resolution on for October, and merger effective December 31st. So that's, any questions? It seems, well, it's the thing to do, but both sides have different opinions, so it's taken a while.
Have we gotten an opinion from Mr. Malsey?
Mr. Malsey has received all the documentation, and thanks for bringing it up, that I've received over the past few months attending the meetings, and he agrees it's the thing to do, but there will be a conference call with the solicitors of the school districts and the Bureau's solicitor and possibly the TCC solicitor, just to answer questions that they may have. So he may bring to light some other things, but we're in general agreement that it makes sense to do this. So, but I'll update you after September 23rd what the Executive Bureau of the EIT decides to do.
So then you'd be asking them to approve it in October?
Or November, depending if there's any other issues that are unresolved. And they could wait until after December to approve the merger. I mean, the contract between the two has been extended through 2015. The other item, quickly, I don't know, I'll pass this out. Maybe you've seen it in PSBA's magazine. Voting for the officers for 2015. Last year was the first year where it became, it was the board's opportunity to vote. In prior years, it was done at the October legislative meetings, and I guess the delegates were the ones that voted. So if you recall from last year, the board decided they wanted to vote. These are what I handed out was the slate of officers. They would have to be put on the agenda for next week. Decide you want to go. It's not mandatory, although these are the folks that will be represented on PSBA. So there, I guess at this point, we can review the candidates. They might be listed on the agenda for next week. You can choose to vote. There's one president-elect. No, there's two. You select one of the two. Treasurer, one vice president, one treasurer, and then from the east, you would select one at-large representative.
On the student figure, do you know any of these?
Yeah, actually, I know more. And I would strongly recommend, Mike Fascinetto is the president of the Bethlehem Board. He is just, I mean, he's really committed to public education. He and I had worked there together when they were laying off a bunch of teachers. And he, I mean, he really has a good heart, and he has the right idea about what education is about. I think he would make it great at large. Chuck Ballard's at East Penn, up in Lehigh County, and again, he's been around PSBA probably 20 years and has been active in it. And I would strongly recommend him just because of his familiarity with both the organization, and he seems to have a good working relationship with the new executive director. And Mr. Voigt is a member of the Muhlenberg Board, and it would be nice to have somebody up there that, you know, knows Berks County.
I do know Mr. Boyd, I can talk with him, but I don't know the other people.
Take a look at those till next week. Are there any other items to come before the board? Sir.
Just to lay the cards on the table, this week, actually last week, after a curriculum committee meeting, I emailed Ann with a question about the one-to-one initiative. And I'm a little embarrassed to say that somewhere, somehow, I didn't quite understand the one-to-one initiative was going to be an initiative that was going to be phased in over a 4-year period. It makes my arguments about making a level playing field for people in my daughter's class and such a little silly now, but my full intent when I talked about it was as a technology tool for the senior high, effective immediately, not for one class. That being said, I think what also threw me, and I just want to bring to the board's attention of, this is another one of those financial issues, is that our bottom line impact in this budget was for the entire 4 years. I realize the top line budget impact was 135, but the reserves for the next 3 school years was $405,000. I can't understand how we can reserve $405,000 for a program. I don't understand that. It just appears to me another way of using these reserves to smooth finances, and I think it's highly unnecessary. I would hope to bring a motion to this group to reverse that reserve as soon as possible.
So what do you, Tim, what do you want to see us do? You want to see us buy all the computers and implement it all at once?
Yeah. I mean, I understand in reading and listening now more to what was being said. I was looking at it as a tool, like a pencil, like a ruler, like anything else, because I realized that some of those kids don't have access. I didn't look at it as a way to burden the teachers or anyone else with more initiatives or programs to develop. I just wanted to say to all the kids here, when you do a research paper, now you have a device at home that you can use. When you need to type up a paper, and my daughter has told me the way some people type up papers without access to technology, and to me it's, I don't know, it saddens me a bit. So I just viewed it as a tool, and nothing more, that we were going to that we were going to give to all the students in the high school.
I'd love to see everybody have one all at once, but as I expressed in the email, my concern is, we want to be able to not only give it to them to use at home, but also to make it a part of the classroom and make sure the teachers understand when it's appropriate to use it and how it's appropriate to use it and how it can be used in a science program, in a math program, in a whatever, art program, a music program, whatever. And I'm just concerned about doing something too fast and not providing enough training for teachers. The kids I'm not worried about. So that would be my only hesitancy. Other than that, I think it's wonderful, and it is a tool. You're absolutely correct in that. It is a tool. But we want it to be a tool that's used well and used appropriately, so the investment that we're making is optimized. That's all.
Yeah, and with that said, again, what then I would suggest is that we have a discussion about reversing the $405,000 reserve, because we don't reserve for any other purchase, to the best of my knowledge, like that out that far.
So what would you do with that
I would use it to eliminate the activity fee. I would use it to do any sort of program initiatives that we thought added value immediately to the program. I would take the $405,000 and I would reduce debt, because that $405,000 sits there as a reserve earning nothing. Where if we go in and retire the fees our own debt, it could be in the neighborhood of $50,000 to $100,000 worth of debt service savings. But having it as a reserve does nothing for us and does nothing for the quality of the education that we provide.
Why don't we put something on the agenda to make it, it's supposed to be positive, that we first saw the computers, and then like the administration to come up with information on it from Alice point of view, and then the board will discuss it next week. Good. 311. Any other matters come forward?
I just want to, Joe, if it's okay with you, just to state that there will be an athletic committee meeting on Monday,
Yes,
6 p.m.
And the sole purpose of that is we would like to get some additional information to the board and also the community about advertising dollars. We're actually seeing more and more people come to us talking about that. So, in talking with Mr. Legath and also talking to the board, we'd like to look at, again, the potential to scoreboard, because again, I think we can get this thing done where it's actually going to be not, where we'll actually make money on it. I really believe. We've had more vendors reach out to us when they see what we have and ask to do more. So we feel that we should strike while the iron is hot and get some additional information. And then the other thing, we figured we'd piggyback it, we're going to review the facility rental schedule, and then come back as far as making recommendations. Is this in line? Should we charge more? Should we charge less? Is this tier 1, tier 2? So Monday night would be nothing more than talking, those two items, we really, unless something else will come across. So hopefully I'll be able to pass along some information Tuesday night.
Work for you here?
Yes.
Tom?
6.
Yeah, Monday night 6. Sorry about that.
I just want to say that I think the French students coming over here to our school is a fantastic opportunity for our students to interact with another culture. And I don't know who was responsible, if it was you, Dr. Morton, or who, but
No, I can't take the credit for
But
that. I'm sure it was the
that
French
is a
teacher.
wonderful, wonderful experience, I think, for both the Exeter community and the students that are coming.
Yeah, I think-
Are they coming with chaperones too, or is it just the students?
I'm sure they're coming with chaperones, they always do, yeah.
Wonderful.
And there is a 9/11 ceremony at the high school on Thursday morning at 7 o'clock. They're all invited. You had good attendance last year, I know.
Well, I just want to congratulate the math programs event at Brifton. It was extremely well attended by all accounts. The introduction of the program, I think it was pretty much of a full house. So congratulations on turning people out and introducing them to the program.
And she's out at the junior high tonight. That's why she's not here. Heidi Rock. Thank you. I'll pass it
Eric
along to
and
her.
John as well.
Yep.
If there's no other issues discussed, let's go home.